Chapter 8. The following Monday, John found Rebecca sitting on her bed, apparently waiting. "Hello there," John said. "I can't paint." "Says who?" "I can't." She frowned. John scanned the room. "Let me see what you've done." "No, you'll laugh at it." "I won't laugh." He spotted the easel near the table, the canvas facing the wall. "Let me see." She shifted the bundle in her left arm and stood up, but her feet didn't move. "Really, I can't paint." "Come on, show me what you've done." She approached it and with her free hand lifted the picture toward herself. She studied her work, then shook her head. "I don't want to show you." "You don't have to." He lifted his eyebrows in a plea. "But I'd sure like to see it." She bit her lip, then tilted her head, studying her painting. When she looked up, John caught the fear in her eyes. "Promise not to laugh." "Of course I wouldn't laugh." He took a step closer. "Can I see?" Hesitantly, she turned the picture around. A light powder blue covered the perimeter of the canvas and reflected the blanket's layers. In the center, an assortment of colors ran together. The blur of paints bore a resemblance to a baby's face, but it was disfigured and obscure. "See?" Her voice cracked. "I can't paint." "The colors are soft. Good choice. The blankets look nice." John reached for the canvas. "Tell me about it." "Well," she let him hold it, but stayed close to it, leaning over it, as if still trying to protect it. "I tried to paint his face, and his eyes, and his cheeks, and his cute nose. And—" Her voice cracked again. She shook her head and withdrew her position over the painting. "I can't." "It's okay, Rebecca." He held it in both hands, examining it. "This is your first try at painting Robert, so I think you should be pleased." "It doesn't look right." He lowered the canvas to look at her. The fear was still in her eyes. He kept his voice steady. "My first and only watercolor was supposed to be a ship on the ocean, but you couldn't tell where the ship starts and where the ocean ends. I can't paint my baby." The tears had surfaced now. One by one, they ran down her cheek, then dripped off her chin. With her free hand, she pulled the canvas away from John. "Don't let this upset you. People are tough to paint. But did you like painting? Do you want to paint something else?" "I want to paint my baby." She stared at the picture, then at the bundle resting in her left arm. Then she threw the painting. "Rebecca?" John spoke cautiously. "I can't paint." The tears fell more rapidly now. "I want to paint Robert, but I can't." The words came out calmly. "Could you not see Robert?" "It's ugly. It's not Robert." She wiped at her cheeks. "I hate it." John folded his arms and kept his own emotions steady. "But you tried it. That's good. That's a positive step." "No, it's not." She drew the bundle up into a hug. "It's not okay." Then a little too quickly, she lowered the bundle, her face examining it. "Can't you see? It's not okay." John was the last to enter the small conference room for a special team meeting in regards to Fawn. Clearcreek's tradition held that the coordinator directed any meeting which pertained to their key person. However, Erica appeared timid and shy as she kept tucking strands of her blonde hair behind her ear. In her soft voice, she said, "As we all know, Fawn has made some wonderful advances these last few weeks. So I set up this meeting to see if we could move up her departure date." Carl, a technician, raised his thick, dark eyebrows. "Why?" Erica smiled a little tensely. "Frank is leaving in less than 2 weeks." "Frank's done remarkably well." Heather, the team's other technician, grinned, revealing her large teeth. "He's one of my favorites. He works so well with me." But the occupational therapist, Matt, cleared his throat and stroked his paisley tie. "This meeting is in regards to Fawn, not Frank." Erica sought to regain control. "Yes, it's about Fawn. It's just that the family would like the two of them to return together. John directed his question to Erica. Do we normally cater to the family's requests? Clara, the group social worker, jumped in. When it's possible, of course we do. Whenever it makes sense, let us not forget our purpose is to help aid the family in the responsibility of caring for these individuals. Frank and Fawn are both here voluntarily. When the parents want them out, they can take them. What they're looking for is our recommendation. That's why we're here. Now, is it a smart move for her to be pulled out? I say strongly, yes. I firmly think so. Dr. Hunter? Matt looked over at the senior professional of the group. You understand what's happening to her? What do you think? Well, he tapped the rim of his dark glasses with one finger. All I can say is that she's surprised even me these last few weeks. His finger shifted down to his cheek. This combination of medicine is amazing. It's really connected with her. He drew back in his chair, sighed, then rested his clasped hands on the table. I'm full of hope. Let's make sure she gets in where she needs to be for her outpatient treatment, and she should be fine. Matt? Erica smiled. How's she been for you? Great. Let me look at a few notes I jotted down. He unzipped his planner. As far as work-related training, she seems rather eager to get back to the routine of life. I guess before she came here, she was a sales clerk. She says she'd like to do something like that again. I mean, she needs to learn to interact well with people. But I think, in time, she'll regain those skills. It wouldn't hurt to keep her a little longer, but it's ultimately the family's choice. He closed his planner. Heather's been over her creative activities, and Carl worked with her on recreation. What do you both think? Carl rubbed his forehead. Why don't we recommend that instead of Fawn leaving with Frank, Frank stays a few more weeks until Fawn is a little more secure? Claire's eyes became wide. Absolutely not. Matt shook his head. That won't work. Not an option, Dr. Hunter said. We don't want to keep any patient here longer than is needed. We'd only slow Frank down. For sure, let's keep him moving along. Frank's been ready for a long time, Heather added. The truth is, Dr. Hunter looked around the group. In my opinion, Frank should have never been here. Then why is he? John asked. It was before you got here, Sanders, Dr. Hunter said. You probably noticed his performance evaluation. His condition wasn't serious enough. However, Fawn's was. In the past, Frank had a few problems and concerns. So when Fawn needed serious care, the parents believed it would benefit Frank to get some similar treatment as well. Treat both now and take care of all the issues at once. That was the parents' view. Like I said, Heather's large teeth gleamed from the overhead light. Frank's more than ready. But we're talking about Fawn, Carl stated. Erica fussed with another tuck of hair behind her ear. She wants to leave with Frank. The parents are pushing for this, insisting on our recommendation. So the question is, do we tell them what they want to hear? Dr. Hunter asked. Is she ready? Yes, Clara said. Cautiously, John looked across the table at Clara. I don't think so, he said. I've run some recent tests on her, and there's no doubt she's improved. That's great. However, she was also brought here due to the depression that was tied in with the schizophrenia. I don't think that's adequately been dealt with. What have you been doing with her then? Clara asked. John avoided Clara's eyes. Instead, he looked at Erica. Frank has almost completed the outpatient training session, but Fawn was never placed in those classes. Matt reopened his planner and flipped through it. That's true, but she hasn't been here for over 6 months. I think, even without that course, she'll be fine. But she's almost been here for 6 months, Carl said. Can I say something? Erica tapped her hand on the table. Everyone looked at her. Dr. Gravers has spoken with the family. They contacted him to get support. I heard about that, Clara said. Matt looked concerned. So what was said? Erica continued. They're really pushing for our recommendation. Dr. Hunter cleared his throat. What did Gravers tell you? What was his response? He said to accommodate the family. Well then, I say we support Graver's instructions, Dr. Hunter said. Erica, you're her coordinator. If you feel she's ready, I'll support you. I think she'll be fine. I agree, Heather said. As far as I'm concerned, Matt paused to circle a few notes. As long as she keeps getting the right training, her skills are coming. She'll adjust okay. Carl looked at John. What do you say, Sanders? I think she'd benefit from staying here for another month. As a team, we could focus on making sure she has the right coping skills for depression. We can make sure she knows what to expect when she makes that transition back into society. However, I trust all of you. I know there are plenty of good day programs. As long as we... Don't worry, Clara growled. Her outpatient treatments keep being mentioned. I'm in charge of that. I've already been involved with the family regarding Fawn's relocation. She'll be fine. Carl? Dr. Hunter looked to him for a final answer. I guess I shouldn't have any reservations either. Wonderful. Erica's face broke out into a beaming smile. I'll call the family tonight. While the group filed out, John felt a tap on his shoulder. Got a question for you, Sanders, Carl said. What's happened with Rebecca? Yeah. Heather paused next to Carl. Brownell? Matt jumped in. Yeah, what happened? Can you explain it? For the past week, Rebecca had digressed, as if all progress had stopped. Her actions again appeared withdrawn and distant. However, after being second-guessed in his opinions regarding Fawn, John felt no interest in discussing Rebecca's condition as well. He looked at the small group, smiled simply, and said, No, I can't. She was opening up, Matt said, making eye contact, smiling, actually communicating, and then it stopped. Carl finished the sentence. I know. John's neck and shoulders tightened. I hope she pulls out of it. Heather's smile faded. Me too. We all do, Carl said. Matt tucked his planner under his arm. It was the best I'd seen her in a while. I was really pleased. John turned away. So was I. That afternoon, John paused outside Rebecca's room. He didn't go in. He just stood there, wondering, waiting for something. In another corridor, there was crying, distant but real. Tears, cream walls, a hallway, a ticking clock. The memories were coming back. Many tears. Not as sisters. Her infant crying had ceased. Instead, it was his mother's cries that continued, tears filled with anguish and shame. The rest of the hospital memory returned. The nurse. She had provided a small bench for him to stand on. Then the cold metal bar. His 5-year-old hands had grasped it, holding it, letting it support him so he could look across the hospital bed into his mother's blue eyes. He wanted her to hold him. She had been gone too long. John reached forward, but his father pulled him back. In place of the emptiness, John held on to the cold bar, placed there to separate him from his mother. There was a large bandage wrapped around his mother's white arm. Innocently, John had asked, What happened? His mother's voice had been tender. Careful. Mommy hurt herself. Sometimes parents make mistakes. Years later, John would learn what his mother had meant, what hurting herself had involved. The injury to her arm had been deliberate, intentional, a form of prevention. Whatever was necessary to avert harm and eliminate the damage she could have inflicted on her young daughter's life. Then came the doctor. He had entered the room and spoke to John's father. The words were kind. They talked about the children. Then the man's large hand had reached out to touch John. Unable to understand, John became tense, close to tears. In that same tender, careful voice, his mother had explained, This is my doctor. He's here to help save Mommy's life. He's a great man. Because of him, Mommy will come home and be a good mother to you, and a sissy. Because he wanted his mother to come home, John shook the doctor's hand, and the seeds of respect, admiration, and wonder were planted, not only for his mother's doctor, but for all who assisted the mentally ill. Through the door's open gap, John studied Rebecca. She was different from his mother. Her condition, her illness, her understanding. There was no infant in her arms, no young child in danger, no family in need, but still, there was a life to save. And in that moment, John made his commitment. He would do whatever needed to be done. The next week, after a frustrating individual therapy session with Maxwell, came Rebecca's time. She was at her post, staring out the window, eyes fixed on faraway scenes. But something was different. Her hands were pressed against the windowsill. Both hands. With no blanket. He scanned the room. On the bed, he saw the bundle. Usually, John joined Rebecca at the window, but today things were different. Instead, he approached the bed and looked at the blanket. The corners of the fabric were inserted tightly. No fold was out of place. This wrap looked as if it had required effort, skill, sacrifice, a type of motherly quest to protect. Such tucks and folds would have restrained, and confined a small infant, leaving nearly no possibility of movement. He felt a sudden hunger to touch it, to feel the article that controlled her, but even more so, he desired to handle the situation correctly. He whispered, "Is your baby sleeping?" She turned from the window. "Robert!" Panic filled her voice. "Robert! Robert!" In response, John pointed, leaning toward the bundle. "Here, Rebecca, he's right here." The green eyes turned wild. She rushed over. "Don't touch him." She snatched the blanket, just as something snapped inside of John. He placed his hand against Rebecca's shoulder. "I didn't touch him." "That's my baby." She twisted out of his reach. "You won't touch Robert. You won't mock Robert, and you won't hurt him, or ever try and take him from me." Her voice was strong, but her hands were trembling. "Listen to me." Tension filled his voice. "I didn't touch him, and you need to trust me." Tears surfaced. "Please, leave Robert alone." She swallowed. "Please." "Rebecca, listen to me." "No. Leave us alone. You will leave us alone, Dr. Sanders." And she left the room.